2024 is, of course, a presidential election year, but it is also the year of Defendant Trump. Defendant Trump 2024. And the first big action of 2024 for Defendant Trump is next Tuesday, when the Federal Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., a three-judge panel, will hear oral arguments in the case of United States of America versus Donald J. Trump, in which Donald Trump is charged with federal crimes leading up to and on January 6th. The first defense Donald Trump has offered to those crimes is that he is immune from criminal prosecution because he was president of the United States. If that argument holds, then all four current criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump will collapse. The appeals court has set an expedited schedule for Donald Trump's appeal of trial judge Tanya Chutkin's ruling that there is no form of immunity that protects a president from criminal prosecution after he has left office. Today, the appeals court issued a notice to Donald Trump's lawyers and Special Prosecutor Jack Smith that the lawyers for each side should be prepared for questions next week in oral argument by the judges about amicus briefs filed in the case by third parties, including one that says Donald Trump has no right to appeal Judge Chutkin's denial of immunity until after the trial. So it is possible that Donald Trump's appeal of this absolute immunity claim could be short-circuited by the appeals court if they agree with that amicus brief, which they find important enough to have warned the lawyers that they are going to discuss it in oral argument next Tuesday. Here is the immunity claim that Donald Trump's lawyers have made in their written brief to the appeals court. No president, current or former, may be criminally prosecuted for his official acts unless he is first impeached and convicted by the Senate. That claim defies the history of impeachment, as it has been used against federal judges, for example, who have been criminally prosecuted before being impeached. Donald Trump's lawyers seem to know that they will probably lose that claim of immunity with the appeals court, and so they have added another layer to their claim of immunity from criminal prosecution for Donald Trump. Quote, nor may a president face criminal prosecution based on conduct for which he was acquitted by the U.S. Senate. And that claim, of course, applies only to Donald Trump, who is the only president ever to face criminal prosecution after being acquitted on similar charges in an impeachment trial in the Senate. Of course, Trump lawyers are not quoting the Constitution when they make that claim. They are simply inventing a principle that they hope a Trump-friendly Supreme Court can accept. Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's 82-page brief to the appeals court describes what is at stake this way. The defendant's sweeping immunity claim threatens to license presidents to commit crimes to remain in office. The founders did not intend and would never have countenanced such a result. Jack Smith says that if the appeals court accepts the Trump argument, then that would give immunity to, quote, a president who accepts a bribe in exchange for directing a lucrative government contract to the payer, a president who instructs the FBI director to plant incriminating evidence on a political enemy, a president who orders the National Guard to murder his most prominent critics, or a president who sells nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary. Because in each of these scenarios, the president could assert that he was simply executing the laws or communicating with the Department of Justice or discharging his powers as commander-in-chief or engaging in foreign diplomacy. Under the defendant's framework, the nation would have no recourse to deter a president from inciting his supporters during a State of the Union address to kill opposing lawmakers, thereby hamstringing any impeachment proceeding to ensure that he remains in office unlawfully. As usual in federal courts, the oral arguments of this appeal will not be televised next Tuesday, but an audio feed will be available, which I hope will be carried live on this network